Cinderella, you're as lovely as your name. Cinderella, you're a sunset in a frame. Though you're dressed in rags, you wear an air of queenly grace. Anyone can see a throne would be your proper place. Welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank, and today on Disney Royalty, we're going to talk about Cinderella and Prince Henry. So I think it's a bit easy to forget how important this film is to Disney as a whole. Not only is Cinderella a very marketable character, I mean, Cinderella's been told 1,000 different times. The Chipmunks have told a story through the Chipettes. DuckTales had one with Scroogerello. But this is also the film that helped pull the company out of its little financial downpour it had. And it's hard to believe that there was a point when Disney wasn't making money. I mean, because in the past, 5 years, they've bought Star Wars, Marvel, and Fox. So to think that there was a time they were short on money is just almost boggles the mind to people who weren't there for that, I guess. And also the little bit of animation when Cinderella's dress transforms is still an amazing bit of animation and is noted as Walt's favorite bit of animation of all time. Also, the castle that Cinderella goes to, that is called the Castle of Dreams, and you have seen it more times than you probably realize. That is a castle you would see in every opening to a Disney film, like doo 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 or ooh. That's what you get. That's that scene there. That's that castle. It's also the castle in all the Disney parks. That is the castle. But from a Disney royalty standpoint and how it fits in the Disney Prince and Disney Princess formula, this film is kind of important. This is what we'd call level 2. We're fleshing out some things, we're not really quite improving on some things, and we're seeing an evolution. Now, it's important to note that this is not an active formula being made. In other words, I don't think anyone here or there at the time was trying to perfect a formula for later films. But it's important to note that there is some work here that we'll see happening later. But with that in mind, let's go ahead. So, for Cinderella, she's come under a lot of fire in recent years, primarily in the direction people think her story has gone. We've more than likely accepted that she didn't want a prince, that wasn't her dream, but we don't really quite understand what her dream is. Most people say like she wanted a dress and shoes, she wanted to be free. That's, I think, is close, but not quite there. The dress isn't close. But let's just start with that opening scene. Cinderella wakes up and she's very comfortable. She's very happy and positive. She's talking about her dreams, how beautiful the dream she had was, how her dreams are wishes her hearts make, and she doesn't tell anyone her dreams because, if you tell a wish, they won't come true. But I think it's also because even amongst these close friends of hers, she's keeping her dreams locked tight. She doesn't want the risk of them being further away. And if you tell them, they do become a bit further away. It's like a secret. The more people know it, the less special it is. But anyway, from that amazingly positive moment, it all sort of changes when the bells ring. And she has to get up. And you notice that, even when she sings and after she sings, she walks down the stairs and it's almost totally stone-faced. She has gone on an almost autopilot-like function in her life now. She prepares the meal, she greets each of her stepsisters and stepmother, and there's none of the same joy or happiness. She's compartmentalized her life to these people get this, these people get this. And that's sort of it. And it makes sense, really. Unlike the live-action Cinderella film, which really brought up the question of, why are you staying here? Get out. We'll take you in. This one here kind of lets you know she has nowhere else to go. That doesn't say it, but it can kind of be the only explanation because she does seem like a prisoner in her own home. There's a great scene when she's talking to her stepmother, and it literally, the shadows of the window look like prison bars. And you even see it a bit more when she's talking to Bruno. When Bruno has that dream, like, did you have the dream you were chasing Lucifer? Did you catch him? That's bad. She's reminding Bruno that, if you attack Lucifer, you're going to be out of here. And I think she knows it very well. That's her own statement, too. She's afraid, or at least aware that if she pushes too far, if she lets it slip, she's out, and she's got nowhere to go. And that's a very real thing. I think we've all either been in a position or known someone who, if they didn't need this class, this job, this this home or this roof over their head, they wouldn't be here. They would leave. They would be more vocal. They would allow themselves to break free. People do the same thing at their jobs as well. It's a very real thing because only in her room, surrounded by her friends, is she allowing herself to be happy and optimistic. And she just sort of goes through her days on an almost autopilot. Whenever she's near her step family, stone faced. Stone faced. And, she won't even acknowledge anything important. She won't be overly cheerful. She won't greet them with the same smile she gives other people. And a good example is when she's singing, when she's cleaning the floors. What's going on? Her step family is up trying to sing, and she's just in her own way having her own fun as she sings "Sweet Nightingale" so sweetly. But going on to her dreams are a big part of this. They're what get her through the day. And when she finds out about the ball, this is her out. As she points out, by royal command, every girl must attend. Lady Tremaine. Now, Lady Tremaine's important here. She's the real bit of work in this film. And I think she's one of the most evil people in Disney. All right, the evil queen in Snow White, nothing on Lady Tremaine. The woman is a monster. And we see that a bit more here when she says, like, well, every girl must attend, but first you've got to get your chores done. You have to make your own dress. And if you do all that, you can go to the ball. And as she reminds her stepsisters or stepdaughters, I said, if. And they know exactly what they have to do. As Jack says, every time she gets a minute, that's the time when they begin it. Cinderella, Cinderella, Cinderella. And she has no time to make that dress. And the dress she's trying to make, I want to point this out, is the dress her mother wore. That's an important thing. So when her friends acquire not only the materials, but also make the dress, she's going down the stairs, she's happy, she's on top of the world. And Lady Tremaine, again, plays it cool as a cucumber, as her stepdaughters are trying to protest, trying to find some loophole out of this. She grabs the pearls, she gently grabs the pearls, almost admiring, these pearls are so lovely, aren't they, Drizella? / Anastasia, I don't remember which one. And that's the trigger. She manipulates them into tearing the dress apart. The dress that was her chance to go have her dream, made by her friends, in honor of her mother, is torn apart by her stepfamily, her evil stepfamily. And they leave her in that dark room, in rags, literally destroy dreams. Literally destroy dreams. I just want to point that out. And it breaks her. And she's literally broken. And we sort of think it's undercut because, it gets a bit better. But that's a real moment. She runs off, she cries. And remember, she says she gives up. She no longer believes in her dreams. And then her fairy godmother shows up. A little bibbidi bobbidi boo magic. And she's ready. Her dream is coming true. And she goes to the ball. She dances with the prince, unbeknownst to her. And then she has to leave as the clock strikes midnight. And as she goes, she's barely able to make it out before everything falls apart. She still has one of the slippers. The first one fell off as per the story. And she's happy. She got that moment that she wanted. And I think at that point she'd have been fine for the rest of her life if nothing changed. But luckily things do start to change. The Grand Duke is on the look for whoever fits the glass slipper. And for that moment, Cinderella lets it slip. She slips back into her morning form. That sort of happy, joyous, nothing can get me moment. And she sort of puts the clothes in someone else's hands. And she's thinking, this is it. It's gone beyond her dreams. And again, she forgets herself. And as she walks off, Lady Tremaine, she realizes that Cinderella was the girl, and she locks her away. Now, it should be noted that scene is very heart-wrenching, and we sort of underplay it, I think, but realizing that Lady Tremaine is once again denying Cinderella her dream. This is a dream she didn't even know she had, I think. And it hurts all the more because she knew exactly what she was going to do the minute she saw her in that mirror. And she's begging to be let out. She's crying. Everything. You could view her room as a temporary, almost fake illusion of happiness. Like, because if she really, I think, took a moment to, analyze her situation, really look at it objectively, she'd realize this isn't good. She sort of fools herself by saying, in here, everything is super fine. And now when she realizes that the real opportunity is there, she's denied it and she breaks down again. But, luckily, through the help of the wonderful animals, her best friends, who are sort of a fusion of the animals in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, she's able to achieve her happy ending. Now, what is Cinderella's happy ending? I think we all sort of underplay it a bit. Or we don't really acknowledge it. I think what Cinderella's really happy moment was not finding a prince, but having a moment when she wasn't the girl who scrubs floors and serves her evil stepfamily and is lucky to live in an abandoned room in a tower. Cinderella wanted a moment when she was none of those things and she was just Cinderella. And that's what that dream was, what the fairy godmother gave her, and what she built up later. Now, coming on to Henry, I'm going to say this as nicely as possible. Henry has to be one of the most boring people I've ever seen, and he's possibly the worst Disney prince. I'm pretty sure. Almost put money on it. Call me on it right now. He's the worst. And this is primarily because he somehow has less to do than Prince Florian in my mind. Because Florian at least saved the girl. Henry's sole purpose seems to be the uninterested rich kid. Like, he has to do this because it's expected of him. And he's sort of like, yes, hello, yes, nice to see you. He does the courteous bow. He plays the game. And then he sees Cinderella. And doesn't really get a lot to do or say. But he goes up. He's entranced by her. Because, again, point out, she's not looking for him. The prince had next to nothing to do with Cinderella's dream. He has to do with the end result. The end result. And they dance. And I think we sort of always write this off as they fell in love the minute they met. And I don't think that's sort of the case. I think Henry is entranced by her. She's a beautiful girl. And we don't know what they talk about. This is a montage here. The song overplays exactly, I think it's 2 hours. Or 2 hours or less when Cinderella and the prince meet up. And we don't know what they talked about. And we've all had conversations with people that were more engaging than introducing ourselves. That felt like a horribly boring afterthought. So why do it? And he's this is where the really huge problem comes with Henry, is that we could make the argument that he's looking for her somewhere else, because it's the king and the duke that make the decision of putting the slipper on every maiden in the land, and whoever fits it, the prince will marry. He said he won't rest till he finds her. He might have been looking out for her himself, but let's shelf that idea because we don't have anything to go on with that. I think the real dark truth is he was enchanted. He was enchanted. And I say this because it's a bit weird that the evil stepfamily cannot identify Cinderella. And you can say, well, they've never seen her, clean and happy. But what if it was glamoring? When you use magic to make something look like something else. Or even more like a perception filter, where someone becomes hard to focus on, like you can't quite make them out, but they're not gone. Like they're there, but you can't quite see it. And with that in mind, what if everything about Cinderella that night was designed to be magical? Because remember, no one questions why this girl's monopolizing the prince's time. She doesn't know he's the prince. And when the slipper falls off, that magic slipper that should perfectly fit her, it falls off. And the other slipper doesn't. It was all designed for Cinderella to put the shoe on to marry her. I'm willing to bet the suspension of disbelief went so far that she's the only girl with a size 4.5. Because you saw the feet on Anastasia and Gisela. Those were not 4.5. Those weren't even 5s. So, again, something that Henry has in common with other Disney princes, particularly Florian, is that he has scenes that were removed from the film, and in this case, it was there's a scene when he's hunting, and we see him interact with a bunch of woodland creatures, the same way that we'll see in another film, which we'll talk about. But it is a bit off-putting to see him sort of be cut out of the film like that. And he does have a musical number that was cut. It's sort of the same way that Florian had an action scene cut. This is sort of a duet he has. It would be more in line with Fievel and Tanya in An American Tail, and SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs. It's just a greasy spool without you. But at the same time, you can see why they cut it out. I mean, the main reason cuts happen by this point in Disney is for time. Animated films are still new. Everything Disney's doing is effectively setting a precedent for how animated films will be done. So you understand why it was cut, but you're like, he had so little to go on. So I recently mentioned Lady Tremaine is sort of the important focal point here, and the reason I say she's worse than the Evil Queen is the Evil Queen doesn't understand why Snow White is more fair. She's attributing it to physical beauty in sort of the way Cersei Lannister does physical beauty. But Cersei Lannister uses physical beauty because I think she also knows she's not a good person. Lady Tremaine, I think, when she looks at Cinderella, is totally aware that Cinderella is better than not just her daughters, but her. Cinderella is everything Lady Tremaine wanted her daughters to be and wanted herself to be. And that just didn't happen. So, where the Evil Queen wants to kill Snow White, Lady Tremaine sort of accepts that, well, I can't kill her. It's wrong, and she may be the only reason I can keep the house. Will issues, I don't know. But she gets more joy out of controlling Cinderella's life. This ability to just control, how her day is going. Because remember, she can turn her attack dog stepdaughters on Cinderella with just a few words. And she even relished in the idea of denying Cinderella happiness. The sort of smirk she gives when she trips the Grand Duke up, that's a special kind of evil. The mercy would have been just to kill her. But bringing this to a close here, we're going to talk about the parallels now. And we'll start with Henry. So Henry has two counterparts, I think, and I call the first one the deconstructed counterpart, which is Prince Charming from Into the Woods. Now, Into the Woods is not one of my favorite films, but I do like/hate the dynamic between him and Cinderella, because he's honestly a likable jerk. He's more like Brom Bones from Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and that's not a bad thing. His relationship with Cinderella comes off more of a rush, sort of like an actual love at first sight sort of thing. But the issue here is Cinderella isn't sure what she wants, and that's sort of a callback to the animated film. I don't think it's marriage that she wants, and Charming sees her running as more of a challenge to him. He's not used to women not loving him, or not being entranced by him. He doesn't chase after women. Women chase after him, and that's a unique thrill challenge to him, because he's not really getting a no, because she keeps coming back, and they keep dancing. So they eventually do marry, and their relationship's sort of an interesting parallel to the dynamic of Rapunzel and her prince. But at the end, the relationship ends with Charming and Cinderella parting ways after she finds out that, he was fooling around. And he's apologetic in his own way, but the realism of the relationship, it sells enough. Like, they're building this off of just the most vague and shallow of reasons. He feels like someone who wanted Cinderella more because she didn't seem to want him, and when the chase was over, he found himself wanting. And it's sort of the strongest part of Into the Woods, this sort of real human element to the characters, that sometimes it's not always the obvious thing of the handsome prince and the beautiful girl. It will be so much more complicated. But the other one is Prince Kit from the actual live-action Cinderella, or as I call him, not Robb Stark. So I still don't quite like the live-action Cinderella. I find it to be just a really dull, almost lifeless movie for me. Still a beautiful movie. I mean, it's very hard to not make Cinderella look bad. It would be a huge cardinal sin for Disney if they couldn't make every movie Walt liked look good. But Prince Kit is sort of, I think, what Henry wanted to be and what he was supposed to be. He meets Cinderella in the woods, and he's entranced by her. He's more active in this film. I mean, he opens the ball up to commoners, hoping that he can see her again, because he doesn't know anything about it, but he wants to see her again. And he has these different relationships and dynamics with other characters, like his father, um, the guards, and whatnot. He has his own story, and that's something very rare for the love interest in a fantasy film. But it's sort of really it. Again, Prince Kid is sort of exactly what I think Henry was supposed to be, and we'll see that a bit more in another film. But coming on to Cinderella, and this took me a while. This did. And I came up with three parallels. And the first one is Tanya Mousewitz from An American Tail, Five Goes West. So Tanya lives her life with a dream that she's unable to achieve. And I don't think it's as obvious as being a singer, which she sort of alludes to. I think it's the same way as Cinderella. Cinderella wants a moment when she's not just Cinderella. Tanya Mousewitz is a poor Russian immigrant whose father has to work 3 jobs. And she'll eventually work, but that's kind of all she can do. She doesn't really have time for much else. And, she sees actors and well-off people, with better dresses who are able to command the attention and show off how beautiful they are. So when Caterwall brings Tanya to Miss Kitty because he heard her sing, you see Tanya's afraid. She doesn't think she's pretty. She doesn't think she can achieve her dreams. And she goes out there. She blows them away. She gets caught in the euphoria for a minute. Because remember, she doesn't even really hear what Fievel's saying. But at the same time, at the end of it, when she looks at her reflection in the water, she's realized she's kind of done. Like, she doesn't really need to sing or, be adored by a bunch of people. She's totally happy to go back to being Tanya Mousewitz, little Russian immigrant. And which is good because we'll never see Tanya be of any use later in any future American Tail film ever. Because that's how it works. Another, if we want to keep true to the Cinderella motif, I would say Brandy in Cinderella, particularly the scene My Own Little Corner, which is a very important bit because, again, like I said, we all have those moments where we're here. There's this little part of the world where nothing can get to us. It's usually something as simple as I'm sitting here having a drink or I'm playing a video game or I have like my own little corner of the house. It's just for me, and the phone's disconnected, my cell phone's off, there's nothing but music playing. No one's allowed to get me in here. And that's what My Own Little Corner is to me. The idea that she can be anything she wants and nothing can get to her. The final one is a bit of a more radical take, and it's Lois Griffin in Mind Over Murder. And primarily because when Lois sings and she talks about how no one cheers for her when she's, when she has to cook, cook and clean, and there's no awards for that. She's just a housewife. She's a wife and mother. She's not Lois Griffin, or even Lois Pewterschmidt, if you want to go that extra mile. She goes on stage and she sings her heart out, and we see that when she sings "Don't Bring a Cloud to Rain on My Parade." It's this sort of moment when she's so much more than just what she's used to every other day, and I think that's what the real dream of Cinderella was. To be something more than just someone who cooks and cleans and takes verbal abuse from family members, step-family members. With that in mind, we're going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Next time, we'll be going off into what may be the best and worst, most idealized versions of what we're going to call the first wave of Disney royalty. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.